You're listening to the Bon Marie Show. It's 8 in the evening. Tune in every night at 8 to listen to the Bon Marie Show on Irish News Radio or ITV.ie. And you can contact anything that you've heard or if anything you'd like to discuss at news@irishnews.
The Bon Marie Show on ITV.ie and Irish News Radio. So today we are talking about the EU and the independence, or the loss of the independence for Ireland as a country. And just we'll be going through each country in Europe and the mess of Europe. Thursday. So Bono, we'll start off with Bono. Bono made 9.6 million in donations. He handed over 118 into charity, so 1.2% of the money he made. And yet he goes on about Africa. I mean, the man just is absolutely a Europhile. He loves Europe, but he is a globalist, a very rich man telling everybody how to live. At this stage, complete joke. I don't even know why I even give him the time to talk about him. So the Germany Chancellor, Hell Hitler as I call her, plans a departure from a troubled Europe because of the EU. So her departure is in 2021. So she'll be staying there until 2021, but she's practically got no votes in. Europe's a mess. We need to also look at the voting system in Ireland, because we need to see who is still registered, who's deceased and actually still registered to vote, because the leftists have no morals, and we need to look at every single thing that they're doing, because it's just insane, the voting that it's gone, that they brought back in Michael D. Higgins. My stomach is still sick over that. So I do think, we need to actually look at what they're doing. We need cameras, we need independent audit, we need a way of seeing if they are still casting the deceased votes, because there is something very, very strange. As much as there's loads of leftists, there isn't enough leftists that even really like that man. So there's something very strange going on. So France is in a very bad way. The ex-minister says there's anarchy on the streets. Police commissions, very violent areas, no-go zones areas. The French moron, his popularity has plummeted. No shock. He's got 26% of the French people support him, so very, very, very low. His disaster cabinet reshuffle that he's done, 71% of the French population said they had no confidence in him. He's taken off time, several days, out of pressure and stress. The French feel increasingly he's out of touch with the average person. No shock. He's an EU file. He's not into being French. I don't like a lot of them. They call him the president of the rich. 23,000. He spent 23,000 on makeup. Bloody hell. Ordering 1,200 new plates. He's a weirdo. Worth thousands of euros. 100,000 people took to the streets to oppose his new economic policies. It's like when the French, eat cake. After Hitler, Merkel, the new Hitler, is to step down. He was supposed to, there's more pressure on him to have a strong voice for the EU, not for the French, obviously. The ex-minister warns of wars because of immigration. civil war breaking out. The violence level in France in certain areas are frightening, according to the police reports. More tensions. France is in a very bad way, but the French moron doesn't care. The setbacks is his undetermined, his authority. No shock. At an all-time low ratings. 3 ministers resign in France. Whoa. So France is in a very, very messy way. In Germany, the same, because her ratings are so low. And she doesn't plan to go out until 2021, but she's really kind of, I think, like, left the hooks out. She's not really getting involved. She has no power, so the Germans won't insist that she steps down beforehand, or maybe they will, but they're very unhappy with her as well. So yeah, the Danish, so the English, then we go back to the Brexit. Brexit is, the Brexit victory. The EU allowed the UK to continue access for trading with Brussels bloc after the exit. Well, the EU is very much weakened. They don't have anything to fight with. The British have, as I predicted, becoming out stronger and stronger. With the British pound is up at 1.28. The Spanish have made a deal and handed an easy Brexit victory. So Gibraltar is being sorted out. The Spanish government, well, not having any choice, because the amount of illegal immigrants that got through their borders, they're in a very bad situation as well. So they're going to probably need the British. Conceding to bid joint control over Gibraltar. The Spanish migrant crisis needs to be on the good side of the UK. And then it goes on about John Mayer, which is an interesting kind of topic, hid facts of the Maastricht Treaty. So this is why the British got into what became the EU. And the British feel that they were tricked into the EU. So they're definitely not going to get another revote, as the Irish and the EU are hoping, or even the French are hoping. They've come out very strong. The treaty that they now know as the EU was misleading the British has redeemed on the Danish document position on consequences of an agreement of the other community members. The Danish wanted to safeguard 4 areas: a common currency, which the British didn't go for, a common defence, which the British won't go for, and the European citizenship, which the British weren't too happy about either. So none of those were ever going to work. And an open operations on immigrations and crime, which wouldn't have really worked either. The Danes had it worked for, like, obviously the Irish and a lot of the other fools, had 2 referendums on the treaty. The first vote was rejected, and the second one was forced through, like what happened to the Irish. Thatcher savagely, for signing Maastricht Treaty to Major, putting his head she compared it to putting his head in the fire. She said she would have never signed that treaty. 30 years later, Thatcher's words are more than ever make sense. She argued that it would lead, that she did not agree with, against nationhood, so against national identity, which is the EU obviously was doing. And she said ultimately would lead to a super state and a power grab. So she didn't want her country taken over by a super state. So they're saying that there's important lessons to make 30 years after she made these speeches. Listening to the Bonry Show on ITV.ie and Irish News Radio. Today is Thursday, so we're talking about the EU and what's the mess of it, and Ireland and what was independence. So earlier on we were talking about the other countries. Poland and Greece are looking for 1 trillion from the German for the war. Politicians have given a warning to Berlin to expect demands. Polish say they were never compensated for the war. Poland was being forced by Germany and bullied by mainly Germany in the EU to take in migrants, and being put under pressure by people like Juncker to say if they didn't take them that they would be kicked out of the EU. So Poland's coming back strong. They are looking for wars are 740 billion. They say Poland never surrendered to Nazi Germany. So, fantastic for them for fighting back. And this is good news. And good news because it could collapse Germany, which collapsed the EU. Because once Germany's gone, it's the main problem with this. Greece also, because of Greece was absolutely flooded and the country is destroyed because of the EU. They absolutely destroyed it. Shocking that it was allowed. And they are going to have to do what the Italians remigration program plan, because that is the only way to save Greece. It is absolutely destroyed. But Greece said that it held off, but it needs the money to fix its country because of the EU. They are looking for 299 billion to rebuild their country and to send, I'd say, the migrants back home, which would be the sensible thing to do. So we're looking at interesting times. It's unraveling each week. There's interesting countries, and there's fights going on, and it is unraveling. The EU will unravel in our lifetimes and within the next few years. I would see Italy going. Once there's one more country to leave the EU, it will fail. The British are gone. They're even going to, by March they're definitely going, but there's even talks of them going before November, December. There's talks of them trying to even get out beforehand to finish all the contracts. By the 29th of March, they're gone. So yeah, I do see this will happen in our lifetime. Thank you for listening on the Bon Ree Show, where we talk about the truth and what's happening out there. Like no other station, you will get the truth, you will get the real news, what's really happening. Not the bullshit media news and the fake news and the leftist news from the Irish government. Thank you for listening on the Bon Ree Show. You're listening to the Bon Ree Show. Today is Thursday on ITV.ie and Irish News. We were just talking about, on Thursday, we were talking about the mess of the EU. So we went through the France and the moron has made of France and the mess it is. And then we're going on with the British, and the British definitely are, there's been a lot of victories for the British. So the first victory that the EU have agreed to continue allow the British to trade with Brussels, because the EU leaders are all very weak. The Hell Hitler has resigned. She's in till 2021, but she's kind of lessened her control on the EU. The moron in France is down. 71% of the French don't relate to him at all and see him a president for the rich, so his ratings are so low. 3 cabinet ministers resigned and he's gone off on a stress holiday. So the EU is in a bad shape and Europe's in a bad shape, so the British are thriving through this. So the first victory they got was continuing trading with the Brussels, which makes sense anyway for the EU. The second one is that the Spanish have now agreed to join control over Gibraltar. So the Gibraltar situation that the EU kept trying to throw a spark into has been solved, because the Spanish need to be on good relations with the British as they're leaving, because of the mess of the migrants, the amount of migrants in their country, and the trouble that it has caused. So that has been sorted out. So the British have kind of been bringing up about John Major when he was in 1992, and how he tricked the British into signing and hid, and how Thatcher had talked out about a power grab and everything that she had warned against, that is happening. So the British will not join the PESCO. They literally have gone. So it's good news for the British. It's definitely good news, not good news for the rest of the Irish. Now, there is the leftists, and the British there's still quite a lot of them there. I think they're bringing out an Islamophobia month. I mean, what about a Christianophobia month, or an anti-white racism month awareness, or an anti-native Irish awareness month, or an anti-British? I mean, the leftists are so crazy. The Danish were forced to sign the Maastricht Treaty is coming out. So the first one, a bit like the Irish, was rejected, and the second one was pushed through. Thatcher comparing John Major as putting his head in the fire by signing a treaty that she said she would have never signed. It was against nationalhood and to lead to a super state. So all her words that she said 30 years ago have come true, and the British are reporting that. The French are very unhappy. The next minute, 3 of them have resigned. He's gone on a stress holiday. He's got 71% of the French that they have no confidence in him. 100,000 people took to the street to oppose his new economic policies. France is in a very bad way. There's police coming out saying that it's very dangerous because of migrants. There's certain no-go zones areas. Civil war police have come out to say that in less than 5 years. And it will be irreversible to change things in France. So that's pretty shocking. Our own government is away with the fairies, of course. He is a fairy, so it's not hard to be away with it. So, I mean, they're really not talking about anything. They're not even talking about Brexit anymore. I don't know what, they're just... They are complete Europhiles, and we don't have a country. There is no independence in Ireland, so there's no even really point talking about Ireland. But there's this shocking social democrats. Sarah Duncan came out with, Ireland can't have an Ireland for the Irish. Like, our forefathers died for an Ireland for the Irish, not for anyone else. The leftists just, they make me sick. I can't even cope with listening to them. They're such absolutely scary. Such a leftist country. I think it's the most leftist. Like, it is scary. Their hate and the anti-Irish feeling and the anti-white feeling in Ireland is actually quite scary. It is very much racism against their own and anybody with white skin, and racism against the British as well. But racism against all white races they seem to have. And that's the leftists, that's our government, that's our president, and that's our media. That is Ireland. It's a leftist, anti-white, anti-Irish country. As I said, the French are in a bad way. So that's what's happening in France. Hungary and Eastern Europeans will not allow open borders. So they're constantly fighting with the EU. Poland and Greece have asked Germany for 1 trillion back for the war. So yeah, Italy is interesting. Italy having completely stopped illegal immigration via sea. They're planning a new, which is very interesting, a re-migration plan for safe Italy. Do you like that? Safe Italy. So I think that's quite good. So 12 million for re-migration, the illegals from Bangladesh, Pakistan, Nigeria and the Ivory Coast are all going to be sent back. Half of the cost will be covered by the EU. Well done, Italy, for bringing them to Italy in the first place. So they're going to plan back to their own homelands and out of Italy. Salvini's well-organised re-migration plan is the only viable answer, he says. Austria joins Hungary and the US and will not allow illegal immigrants and refuses to sign a UN migrant pact. So you can see Austria is stepping up. They're not doing anything. Italy's fighting back. Most of Eastern European. France is in a bad way. Germany is in a bad way, as in that they have nobody to step in to take her place, and she was the one who caused the problem in Europe, which is a massive mess. As you can see, all the countries are beginning to unravel. The only ones that are coming out from strength is the British, and that's because they've left. So they made a deal with the Spanish and made a deal with the EU so they can continue on trading. So they're in a very strong position. They will come out very, very wealthy. And the only reason the Irish want to keep the open borders is because the leftists are flying in black Africans, of course, because it can't be white because it's an anti-white country, and bringing them in because most of them only want to go to the UK anyway. So if they can cross the border from into Belfast, they can get into the UK. And so that's what's happening. And that's the real reason why the Irish want to do that. But now that the EU is unravelling, I don't know what the Irish are going to do now. They don't seem to be backtracking with the British or doing any deals, like even the Spanish have come out and done that, even the EU themselves, where the Irish now are going to go, oh, we were all great friends, really, really sorry about all that border stuff. Anyway, I mean, the British, the way it's going, will have no choice but to put up a border. And the reason is because they're bringing in illegal immigrants in. There's no control on our borders. There's nothing being stopped. If you're black and you're African or you're Muslim, you're getting in. So, I mean, the British have had enough of this problems. They can't. Anyway, you're listening to the Bonnery Show on ITV.ie and Irish News. There is good news, though, because this EU Nazi plan is unravelling, as we see. I mean, either they'll come out and have to redesign it to a place where it's safe for Europeans to live in Europe and live in their own homeland countries, or it'll have to do, as Italy has smartly done, re-migration plan, which I think is the most fantastic plan ever, that to actually bring them all back to their own homeland countries. And that's what every European country is going to have to do, which is going to cost millions by the time of each country having to re-migration program is the only viable answer. And I think he's right, for the whole of Europe, not just Italy, for the whole of Europe. I mean, it'll cost millions. And what they should have done was put that money into the countries and left the people there, instead of flooding out Europe and putting Europe in a dangerous place. It never made any sense, this whole migration plan into Europe. And what time has this ever made any sense? One, they weren't a war, and even if they were, what happened in war times before? People send their troops over there to protect the communities and build them up. They didn't flood our countries. It was never going to work, and I'm so glad Italy has a brain and the re-migration plan, and I hope it spreads to the rest of Europe. Get them all out, get all the Muslims and get them all back into their homeland countries, because Europe should be safe for the Europeans to live, and it is not. And that is because of the EU and open borders and the migrant plans. And what we need to do is then look at who really needs to be taken out, which is white Africans who are being killed. But nobody wants to look after them because their skin is white, and there's such racism against white people that they're leaving them to die. Or the Christians in Muslim countries. Also, what they don't want to mention, these people who are being killed in those lands are because Muslims are killing them. And we don't take the Christians out, which is completely doesn't make sense. We should be, if you really wanted to help people, we should have been taking the people that need refuge, which is the white South Africans and the Christians. The ones that are killing, they're bringing into our countries. So, like Italy, we all need a re-migration program and send them all back. Congratulations, Italy, the one country that's really making sense. The rest of them are having enough as well. Austria, you can see that happening too. You can see them sending it back. Hungary didn't take them in. Eastern Europeans didn't take them in, so they're not in that problem. Greece will have to do the same thing because Greece is collapsing as well. Thank you very much for listening to the Bonry Show. Talk to you tomorrow.
You are listening to Irish News Radio at irishnews.net. Email news@irishnews.net.